All right, we're on accounting for notes receivable. Here's some terminology. So we're chapter 5. We switched from accounts receivable to notes receivable. So accounts receivable were credit given to your customers in order for them to buy your good or service. Typically had no interest, and notes receivable are going to bear interest. And you may have a note for somebody to buy your product, but more typically this is lending done by a financial institution. We're just lending to somebody so they can buy whatever they care to, a car, a house, or what have you. So, two terms that aren't so common in everyday life, but they're more common in business: creditor and debtor. And in our everyday life, they get backwards. Um, so the creditor is the lender; they own the note. The debtor is the borrower; they issue the note, and to them, it's a note payable. Okay. In your other lecture, you probably already saw principal, interest rate, the term, some other things. I don't know if they mentioned payments per year. They did mention maturity date and maturity value. And they may not have mentioned, excuse me, the difference between amortizing and non-amortizing loans. So amortizing is kind of what you're used to every day: auto loan, mortgage, same payment every month, and then part of the payment goes to interest, part of the payment goes to principal. All right? But most of the borrowing we're going to see, and in fact, a lot of corporate borrowing is like this, it's non amortizing. There's interest only payments, and then the principal is due at maturity. So we're going to assume that our notes are non amortizing. Okay? Uh, how do we account for the initial recognition? We're going to recognize it as historical cost, like almost everything else we've done. So they issue a $50,000 note. They have a $50,000 note receivable, and they essentially bought the note with cash. They lend somebody money. Lending money is buying a note. So they issued it on August 1st, so 12/31, you're going to have a partial year adjustment. And there's different ways to do this. Sometimes when you have partial year adjustments for depreciation or here for interest or for other things, it's good to think of interest accrued per month. That's what that says, interest accrued per month. You take the principal times the annual interest rate and divide it by 12. That'll give you the interest accrued per month. So if you want to determine interest payments, you could take the interest accrued per month times 12 and then divide that by the number of payments per year. If you want to find the interest expense, which this is the one we're interested in most of the time, you take the interest accrued per month times the number of months since the last payment. Okay? So looking ahead here, this is 12/31. It was issued on August 1, so from August 1 to December 31 is 5 months. It tells you here you're doing 5 months. So it's August 1st, so it's all of August, September, October, November, December, 5 months. The amount of interest per month is 50,000 times 6% divided by 12. So we have to multiply that by 5. So 0.06, 50,000 times, 12 divide, 5 times, and to me that's looking like 1250. 1,250. So they earned, the customer had their money for 5 months at 6%. They earn 1,250. Debits equal credits, but it's an adjusting entry. They're not getting paid, but they do expect to get paid, so they recognize interest receivable. Okay, now here, later on August of the following year, Let me get my pen. All right, we're good. They're going to get the cash payment. So 50,000 times 6% equals 3,000. That's where the 3,000 came from. So it's one payment a year, 3,000. The interest receivable, we got our cash, so now we received it. That was 1,250. All right. So the difference, debits have to equal credits, is 1,750 in revenue. Or for revenue, let me put payment over here. You have January, February, March, April, May, June, and July. It's August 1st, so it doesn't cover August. So you had 5 months last year. You're going to have 7 months this year. And what was the monthly interest? 50,000 times 6% divided by 12. And we're going to multiply that number by 7. So 3,000 divided by 12 times 7 equals 1,750. So you could calculate it and put it in there, or you could also notice that to make debits equal credits, you're recognizing 1,750 of revenue, 1,250 in the prior year, 1,750 through 8 months of this year. Okay, now payment at maturity, you're going to remove the asset note receivable because you're getting paid the 50,000 for that. The other 3,000 is split just as it was above. If you calculate it every year, it's going to be the same, 1,250 and 1,750. All right, so that's the cycle for notes receivable. Initial recognition, you might have a partial year of interest revenue to recognize. Then you get a cash payment where it's part receivable, part revenue. And finally, the payoff. So that should cover all your bases for notes receivable.